Right, guys, so this time I'm here to tell you about how flawed the disability field is in Texas. So typically, when someone gets hired at one of these ICF or HCS disability providers in Texas, typically, it would be recommended that they undergo a mental health screening and a drug screening test. But typically, in a lot of ICF and HCS disability providers don't do that. But there are some that do, and my goal right now is to get the law changed in Texas to where all people who get hired at ICF and HCS disability providers in Texas have to undergo both a mental health screening, a drug test, and a have to undergo basically a mental health screening, a drug test, and a physical health screening with their personal physician to make sure they're in good health, to make sure they're well enough to return to work. Because I don't because based on my experience, I don't want to have another experience like I went through with DNS, where my weekend staff was where there was a time in February of 2015 where my weekend staff was like just sick as a dog, and there was no one to fill in for her. And I was at risk of, and me and my roommates were being, were at risk of becoming sick. And basically my weekend staff from DNS was displaying these flu-like symptoms. And basically my weekend staff from DNS at the time was displaying these flu-like symptoms. And DNS knew that it was a violation of OSHA standards. It was a violation of OSHA policy, and they did it anyway. Now, typically, if an OSHA inspection had uncovered that my weekend staff was having these flu-like symptoms, and um, they were not allowing her to call in sick, then OSHA would have would have would have given DNS a citation for creating hazardous living conditions. And so um, I'm just saying, like, that's one of my primary motives for asking Texas law, or I should say, for asking Texas lawmakers to change the law in Texas to where not only do people who work um, at ICF and HCS disability providers in Texas to undergo um, a drug screening test, a drug test, and a mental health screening, but also a physical health screening to make sure they're to make sure they're in good standards with their community. And basically it'll work where they have to undergo a monthly mental health screening and a twice monthly physical health screening and a twice monthly drug test to make sure that they don't have to make sure they're in good physical health and to make sure they don't have any drugs in their system. So, and this is just to make sure that people who work in the disability field aren't constantly showing up for work sick. So, aren't constantly showing up for work sick, aren't showing up for work under the influence of illicit substances, and aren't showing up for work um, um, not without and they're not they aren't showing up for work when they're not in the right state of mind. Because basically, if they can't pass the physical if they can't pass a mental health screening and a drug test or a physical health screening, and they should literally have a doctor's note. Say they should literally have at least have like a doctor's note saying that they're not a doctor's note saying they're not in good health. They're not, either not in good physical health or they're not in the right state of mind to return to work. So, you know, and the same should be said for like, for people who live in ICF and HCS group homes. And especially when it comes to like the day have I was a the day program I was attending in Denton when I first moved back to Denton. Like basically, like if it's determined that um that a that like a LifeWorks participant is not in the right state of mind, is basically not in the right state of mind, then that LifeWorks participant's psychiatrist should at least give LifeWorks, a doctor's note excusing them from LifeWorks until they're in the right state of mind. So I'm just saying, I knew a couple of people at LifeWorks should have literally, I knew a couple of people at LifeWorks, or I know a couple of people that used to attend LifeWorks, that used to attend LifeWorks, that like some still attend LifeWorks, others don't. People that used to attend LifeWorks and the ones that do still attend LifeWorks, based on their actions, my honest to God opinion is that they should have literally had, they should have had a, based on the fact they were not in the right state of mind. They should have literally had, like the ones that they should have literally had a psychiatrist note saying that they were not saying they should have literally had, a psychiatrist note telling Weeboo and the other administrators the other LifeWorks administrators, this doctor's note should have told Weeboo and the other LifeWorks administrators that LifeWorks client was not in the right state of mind and shouldn't have been allowed to return to LifeWorks until he or she was in the right state of mind. And in particular, there was a client named Rachel who should have literally had a psychiatrist note, who should have literally had um, a doctor's note from Sunita, who's basically the psychiatrist at Abbott. And Sunita should have literally issued Rachel a doctor's note that basically told Rigu she could not return to LifeWorks until she was deemed to be in the until she was deemed to be in the right state of mind. And there's also another client at LifeWorks named Nick who basically just is kind of just, a nuisance to everybody at LifeWorks. And basically, Nick's psychiatrist should have literally just, it should literally have issued, should literally it should have literally, and judging by Nick's behavior, the way that behaved towards everyone at LifeWorks, Nick's psychiatrist should literally have issued a doctor's note saying that Nick not was not sane enough to return to be at LifeWorks and should have literally been suspended from LifeWorks until he was mentally stable enough, and mentally sound enough to even be at LifeWorks. And then there was another guy who I don't think is at LifeWorks anymore. His name was Chad, and same can be said for Chad. I think Chad should have, my opinion is Chad should have also had a psychiatrist note literally saying that he shouldn't have even been at LifeWorks, and basically Chad's psychiatrist should have basically get handed Weebu and the other LifeWorks administrators a psychiatrist note saying that he shouldn't have even been at LifeWorks, that he shouldn't have even returned to LifeWorks, and shouldn't have even been at LifeWorks until he was deemed mentally until he was in the right state of mind. And if it came down to where Chad shouldn't have even been at LifeWorks at all, I think Chad's psychiatrist should have just passed Weebu a note saying that Chad should have found a different day program. So that's why I think, Texas lawmakers um, should really make a consolidated effort to make sure that people who work in ICF and HCS group homes should literally, at least have some kind of doctor's note that says that if they're not in good physical health and good mental health, they should they should not under any circumstance return to work until their psychiatrist and their personal physician has deemed that they are mentally and physically well enough to return to work. The same can be said for people who attend day programs, that their psychiatrist and their personal doctor should literally issue them a doctor's note saying that they are not in good mental and physical health to be attending day program, and that they should basically just be at home until they're in the right state of mind to be attending that day program. And I'm sure LifeWorks feels the same way about me, but I should have been issued, a psychiatrist note saying that I shouldn't have even been at LifeWorks until I was in the right state of mind. But I feel that, you know, in my opinion, I feel that all the people I've known, all the group homes I've been at, are the ones who should have been issued a doctor's note, who should have been issued a psychiatrist note saying they were not mentally well enough to even have been at work, and they were the ones who should have just been issued psychiatrist notes to not even be at work until they were deemed be in the right state of mind. I mean, the mental health system fails people all the time. And like I feel that when people are failed, when the mental health system in Texas fails both fails people with learning disabilities and fails day programs, it really does come down the to both the medical doctors and the site to both the mental health it really falls back on the medical doctors and the mental health professionals, because the medical doctors and the mental health professionals are the ones who should be issuing these doctor's notes saying this person is not well enough to return to work, or this person is not well enough to return to day program. So, it's literally, because, it's the responsibility of the mental health professionals and the medical doctors to be making the right call and to be saying this person is not physically or mentally well enough to return to work, or this person with a learning disability is not mentally or physically well enough to return to day program. And that's just the way it should be in Texas. If a person with a learning disability or a person who works in a group in an ICF or HDS disability HDS group or an ICF or HDS group home is deemed by a medical doctor or mental health professional to not be mentally or physically well enough to return to work, that person should be issued a should literally be issued a doctor's note to their day program or to either their day program or their boss saying this person is not mentally or physically well enough to return to day program, or this person that should say either this person is not mentally physically well enough to return to day program, or this person is not mentally or physically well enough to return to work, period. And that's just the way it should be. And, a medical doctor or mental health professional should always be informed by an employer or day program of any unpredictable behaviors or physical health problems that might be going on, that a professional caregiver or day program attendee might be having. So, if you see, it's like when someone tells you, if you see tells you see something, say something. That applies to everybody, not just professional caregivers, but people with learning disabilities. If a day program administrator sees something, they should say something to somebody, whether it's, a mental health professional or even a medical doctor. And in my opinion, you know, day program administrators in Texas are not saying anything to psychiatrists or medical doctors about any unpredictable behaviors. Are not saying anything. Are literally not, people who run, you know, disability providers and day programs in Texas are not saying anything are literally not saying anything to medical doctors and mental health professionals, of professional caregivers and people with learning disabilities, which they should be. And if you, like I said, if you see something, you need to say something. If you see something, you need to see something that's not right about a professional caregiver or a person with a learning disability. You need to say something immediately, and you need to let that person's case manager or you need to let that person's case manager know. You need to let that person's psychiatrist that you need to let that if it's a person with a learning disability who lives in an ICF or HCS group home or group home know. You need to let that person's case manager know. You need to let that person's therapist know, and you need to let that person's psychiatrist know. If it's a professional caregiver, you need to let that and that person works for you. You need to let that caregiver's both that caregiver's psychiatrist and therapist know. That way, hopefully, the caregiver's psychiatrist and you also need to let that caregiver's medical doctor know. That way, that caregiver's either that caregiver's medical doctor or psychiatrist can issue them a doctor's note saying, I don't think this caregiver is well enough to be returning to work. So, you know, um, and that just applies to every caregiver, to every professional caregiver and person with a learning disability in the state of Texas. And as an advocate for change, I'm strongly advocating for Texas lawmakers to pass legislation that would make a monthly mental health screening and a twice monthly drug test and physical health screening by a medical doctor mandatory for all professional caregivers and day program participants in the state of Texas. So I'm just saying, when it comes to professional caregivers and individuals with learning disabilities in the state of Texas, I would rather be safe than sorry. So, with me, like I said just now, with me, when it comes to individuals with learning disabilities and professional caregivers in the state of Texas, I would rather be safe than sorry. So, as opposed to just having someone who's literally not in the right state of mind and is literally not and is literally is literally showing up for work, not is literally showing up for work and day program not in the right state of mind and literally not physically well enough. So, so, for me, I think it's a matter of just, hold on guys, I'll be right back. All right, guys, I'm back. So basically, like I was saying, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're either a professional caregiver or a person, an individual with a learning disability. I think that every professional caregiver, an individual with learning disability in the state of Texas should basically undergo a monthly mental health screening and a twice monthly drug test and a twice monthly physical health screening to make sure they're in good standing with the community. Just to make sure, and if they and if that and if they can't pass a monthly mental health screening, either a monthly mental health screening, a drug test, or a monthly a twi or a physical health screening, then their psychiatrist or medical doctor should issue their day program and should issue that person's employer or day program a doctor's note saying that they're not physically well enough to return to work. And that should just be the bottom line in Texas.